made the decision, you left your professor job and you went off to Sandia National Labs, and that work was really different. Can you describe a little bit sort of just what that job was doing?
Yeah. So it was super intimidating for me at first because we were kind of an internal consulting group for projects across the labs, and they do all sorts of things. About half the work that Sandia does is defense related. About half is other sorts of kind of defense, sometimes kind of defense related work, but not directly for the military. But projects across the labs, people would call up my boss and say, we need some statistical support, which is hugely unusual. First of all, people often don't realize when they need statistical support. And she would farm us out to projects. And so we'd walk in, the first time I walked into a meeting there, I don't remember which project it was, but it was very intimidating to walk in not knowing anything about the context of the work that you're going to be doing and having people look to you for answers. So it was definitely a new experience. Some of the things that I worked on, there was a group that was trying to develop a ceramic that was porous but strong enough to be used as a separator in a battery for a weapons system. And so it's an experimental design, basically a recipe sort of experimental design. I didn't know anything about that sort of experimental design when I started, but I learned, and we worked together and they built a ceramic. I worked on some radar imagery problems where they flew over, they took radar imagery from planes and they would fly the same paths and align the images and look for changes. So that was something that was used in the defense world.
So would you describe, it sounds like each context you had to learn about the context. Did you have to learn brand new statistics for each different context you were working in, or was the statistics kind of the same no matter which project you were working on? What did that look like?
So I always had to learn new context, and that was fun. The statistics sometimes were things that I already knew, and they were reusable. A lot of statistics is transferable. And many projects there didn't need sophisticated stats. So some of it was transferable, but I learned something new on almost every project too, because there was always some twist that...
And how would you go about learning that, whatever you needed to learn in order to do that? Were you kind of on your own? Did you have people to go to, or how did it work?
So we had a small group of statisticians, and I relied on the senior people there. I very often went knocking on Ed's door and would say, Ed, here's what I'm working on. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking might work. What do you think about that? And he would often say, great, go with it. But often he'd also jump in with more context about the Sandia background that I didn't know and that was helpful. So mentors. And reading, I did a lot on my own, but there was a lot of communication with other people too.
So a question that comes to mind in working in a big national lab like that, especially on like defense projects, as a mathematician, maybe in algebraic geometry, questions of ethics don't come up very often of like, is what I'm doing going to hurt anybody or things like that. Did you have any personal, internal conflicts about the work that you were doing, or did anything come up did that show up at all for you, or was there anything that you were either worried about or wondering about in doing work that more applied to the real world?
So yes and no. So Sandia is responsible for the safety and security of the nuclear stockpile. I'm not a fan of nuclear weapons, so spending a substantial amount of my time working on nuclear weapons problems felt somewhat weird. On the other hand, I don't feel like what I was being asked to do was unethical. If we're going to have those weapons and we have them, then wanting them to be safe and secure is, I'm happy to be working on, right?
Totally.
So, not so much there.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there was a lot of integrity in the way things were done there and in all the positions that I've had, where if there's a question, we do our best to provide the right scientific answer and not be pushed by politics or other
Yeah. So
concerns.
yeah.
Yeah.